This is your macroeconomics video on bank reserves. As we start to talk about how the banking system works in the United States, we're going to start with something that's a legal requirement, which are bank reserves. So in the United States, we have what's referred to as a fractional reserve banking system. And this means that the banks are required by the government to keep a fraction of the deposits as reserves or in cash. And then they can use the rest to give out in loans to other customers. So the bank obviously has to have some cash in its ATMs and at its branches so that when you as a customer want to go withdraw some money, they have some cash available. But remember, the bank makes money by taking the money that you have deposited into your accounts and removing it and giving it to another customer who came in who wanted a loan. Now, the person who borrows the money in a term of a loan agrees to pay it back plus interest, so that's how the bank makes profit. They give you a little bit of interest on your account for allowing them to borrow it. Everybody's happy. But the central bank of a country, which we call the Fed or the Federal Reserve Bank, establishes what's referred to as a reserve requirement. This is a certain percentage of all of the deposits at a bank that they are required by law not to loan out. So that reserve requirement, let's say, is 10%. Then that means they could loan up to 90% of all of the other money deposited at that particular bank's branch. Now, the reserve requirement is set up by the government, and no bank is ever allowed to dip into the required reserves. That, under no circumstances, can be loaned out, although the Federal Reserve can alter that percentage if they want to. Banks can also choose to hold more than its required reserves, and these are referred to as excess reserves. So if the government requires a 10% reserve requirement, the bank, just to be on the safe side, could then have an additional 5 or 10% in excess reserves to have just more cash to give out. The required reserve ratio is referred to as RR, and this is the fraction of deposits that are required reserves, and it's typically in a decimal form. So if the required reserves are 10%, then RR would equal 0.1. Now we're going to talk about various types of banking systems, and in the following video, we're going to do a pretty simple example. But we're going to assume that there's only $100 of currency in circulation. And remember, banks do various things. They allow you to put money into checking or savings and pay your bills easily. They also allow you to come in and borrow money for which you have to pay interest. So we're going to look at the way that a bank's issuing of credit and savings affect the entire economic system here. So if we had no banking system at all, that also means that there's no place for you to get a loan. Everybody would be paid by their employer in cash. You would save up your cash in your house somewhere, and you would pay all of your bills in cash, and you would buy all your consumer spending in cash. You, of course, don't have any place to save this money except for in your home, and so you're also not earning any interest on your savings, because you earn interest when the bank loans your money out to somebody else. But because that's not happening here, your money is just in a shoebox in your closet. So in a system where there are no banks at all, the government can't just change the money supply because there's no issuing of extra credit. You're only getting the money that you earn from your job. And if you wanted to save up money in order to buy a large purchase like a house or a car, you would have to save up lots and lots of cash and buy it in cash. So there's no such thing as financing. So the second type of bank is called a 100% reserve bank. Just like it sounds, they keep all of your money in a bank. Obviously, that means they don't loan the money out. It's just kind of a holding facility. This is what Swiss banks typically are. You've probably seen those in movies. It's really just a big, secure safety deposit box. You're paying the bank for really high security, which is why very wealthy people who want to keep some cash and they don't really trust a bank would put some money in a Swiss bank. Because if you don't trust the bank to take your money out of your account, loan it to somebody properly, and then give you interest on it, or you think that the bank is loaning it to people who won't pay it back, then you might prefer to keep it all in reserve. Now remember, 100% reserve system means you're not earning interest on your money here. And you do still have to pay the Swiss bank for a security fee, typically like a monthly account fee for having your account at that bank. But you can also hold things in not just cash, but you could put guns or jewelry or important papers in there if you wanted, anything of value. I'm sure you've seen the Jason Bourne movies, and in the first Bourne movie, Jason Bourne finds an account at a bank in Zurich, Switzerland, and he goes there and they literally have a drawer for him, and he opens the drawer and finds that he's got, various types of currencies from various countries, passports, things like that. So it's literally a bank that has your money in a drawer just waiting for you. 100% reserve banking system also can't change the money supply because they are not issuing loans. They're not taking your money out of your drawer and giving it to another customer. So you're not earning any interest on your saved money, and you're also not allowed to borrow any money from them and thus pay them interest. It's just a holding facility. There is no credit or debt being created by the bank itself. The third type is what we have in the United States, which is a fractional reserve system, just like we talked about, where the government requires a certain amount of required reserves. Banks can keep excess reserves for handing cash out to customers, and then the rest of the money is loaned to other customers in order to make profit.